Welcome back to Charged Alpha. I'm Hudson Thomas, joined as always by my co-host Lana Chen. In this segment, we're zooming out from the quarterly noise for a full company chapter.
That's right, Hudson. Before we dig into the latest earnings, let's make sure we actually understand this business, what it does, how it makes money, and what makes it competitively distinct.
Reddit started in 2005 when Steve Huffman and Alexis Ohanian built a link-sharing board during a Y Combinator session. The idea was dead simple. Let people vote on what matters.
Condé Nast acquired Reddit in 2006, then spun it out as an independent company in 2011. The platform grew largely without major corporate intervention for over a decade.
What makes Reddit structurally different from other social platforms is the community architecture. Over 100,000 subreddits exist, each built around a specific topic by people who genuinely care about it.
That organic community depth is genuinely hard to replicate. A competitor can build a blank platform, but they cannot manufacture 15 years of authentic conversation about amateur radio or personal finance advice.
Reddit's business is roughly 88% advertising. Advertisers want access to engaged niche audiences, and Reddit delivers that at scale in a way few platforms can match for specific verticals.
The gross margin is around 88%, which reflects the low incremental cost of serving a user-generated content platform. The biggest investments go into safety, moderation, infrastructure, and engineering.
The second revenue stream, data licensing, is newer and potentially very strategic.
Google signed a deal to license Reddit data for AI training. OpenAI followed. These arrangements give Reddit a recurring revenue stream that is structurally tied to the AI build-out happening across the industry.
Reddit went public on the New York Stock Exchange in March 2024, the first major social media IPO in several years. The platform had been private for nearly 2 decades before that.
Daily active users have been growing over 40% year over year. Monthly unique visitors exceed 500 million globally.
Steve Huffman co-founded Reddit and returned as CEO in 2015 after stepping away for several years.
Competitively, Reddit sits in an unusual position. Meta dominates broad social graphs. Reddit dominates interest graphs. The communities people join around topics they are passionate about rather than people they already know.
The Google relationship is especially important for Reddit's moat. Reddit content appears prominently in Google search results, giving the platform persistent organic traffic that reinforces community growth without paid acquisition.
The long-term model is straightforward. A growing user base in high-intent communities attracts advertisers willing to pay a premium. Data licensing adds a parallel revenue stream tied to AI industry demand.
Reddit is still early in its monetization journey. The platform has more daily active users than most advertisers realize, and the tools for reaching those users have only recently been built out properly.
The key metrics to follow are daily active user growth, RPU expansion, and the size of the data licensing pipeline. Those 3 together define how fast this business can compound.
That's the company chapter for Reddit. Now that we've got the full picture, let's get into the earnings.
Time to dig into the numbers. Let's go.
Reddit just posted one of the most impressive earnings beats of this entire season. Q1 2026, revenue of $663 million, up 69.1% year over year. EPS of 107 crushed the street's 62-cent estimate, a 72.6% beat. Gross margin of 91.5%. A social media platform printing near software margins. This is Charged Alpha, and Reddit's quarter deserves a serious look.
Reddit is the internet's front page, a network of communities called subreddits covering every topic imaginable, from investing to cooking to niche hobbies. The platform monetizes primarily through advertising, but a newer and arguably more important revenue stream has emerged: data licensing. Reddit's 18-plus years of human-generated discussion is among the most valuable training data sets in the world for large language models. That insight is now a business.
Reddit went public in March 2024. Q1 2026 is its first full calendar year as a public company. Market cap sits at $28.2 billion. The company has 97 million daily active users, up 40% year over year. That's not just impressive growth, it's proof that Reddit's platform engagement is deepening, even as the company scales. Most social platforms struggle to grow DAUs at that rate at Reddit's size.
The income statement for Q1 2026, revenue $663 million versus $392 million in Q1 2025, 69.1% growth. Gross margin of 91.5% is extraordinary. For context, Meta runs at around 80% gross margin. Reddit is running higher than Meta on gross margin. That reflects the platform economics of digital advertising. Nearly every incremental revenue dollar drops almost entirely to gross profit.
Operating margin was 27.6%, and net margin hit 30.7%. EPS of 107 versus 62 cents estimated, a 72.6% beat that is one of the largest percentage beats I've seen from a company this size in recent memory. It's not a rounding error. Reddit is genuinely outperforming expectations as ad monetization per user scales faster than analysts modeled.
Cash flow is equally strong. Trailing 12-month operating cash flow of $876 million and free cash flow of $869 million. The gap between OCF and FCF is minimal. Reddit has very low capital expenditure requirements because it's a platform, not infrastructure. Cash on the balance sheet is $2.77 billion against just $21 million in debt. Net cash of $2.75 billion means the company is effectively self-funding any strategic initiative it wants to pursue.
The data licensing deal is critical context for these numbers. Reddit signed agreements with Google and OpenAI worth over $200 million annually to license access to Reddit's corpus of content for AI training. That revenue carries near 100% margins and flows almost entirely to the bottom line. It's a business line that didn't exist 2 years ago and is now a meaningful contributor to the margin profile.
Equity on the books is $3.18 billion, and return on equity stands at 22.3%. For a company that went public only 14 months ago, those metrics reflect a fundamentally sound and profitable business, not a growth-at-all-costs operation burning cash to acquire users. Reddit is actually earning real money at real margins.
Daily active user growth of 40% year over year to 97 million is the engine behind all of it. More users means more ad inventory, more data to license, and more community engagement that deepens the moat. Reddit's challenge historically was monetizing its massive audience. That challenge appears to be solved based on these results.
Analyst sentiment is uniformly positive. 12 buys, 8 holds, 0 sells. That's rare for a company trading at 40 times earnings. The average price target is $168, and with the stock at $147.40, Reddit is actually 14% below the consensus target. That's the inverse of Apple's situation. Here, the street thinks Reddit is undervalued at current prices.
The valuation metrics: trailing PE of 39.9 times, EV to EBITDA of 40.9 times, price to sales of 11.38 times, price to book of 8.88 times. These are premium growth multiples, but the bulls argue they're justified by the combination of 69% revenue growth, 91% gross margins, and a data licensing business that is still in its early innings.
Buy-rated analysts are focused on the monetization runway. Reddit's ad revenue per daily active user is still substantially below Meta's ARPU, meaning there's significant headroom to grow revenue without adding a single new user. As Reddit improves its ad targeting and expands into new formats, video ads, shopping integrations, ARPU should expand materially over the next 2 to 3 years.
The holds are mostly valuation-driven. At 40 times earnings with a beta of 2.41, Reddit requires strong execution and a favorable macro environment to hold these levels. Any slowdown in digital advertising spending, as we saw in 2022 when the ad market corrected, would disproportionately hurt Reddit given its exposure to brand and performance advertising.
Beta of 2.41 is the key risk metric here. Reddit moves 2.5 times the market. In a risk-off environment, a recession scare, a Federal Reserve surprise, a geopolitical shock, this stock will sell off harder than the index. That volatility is the price of admission for exposure to a company growing at 69% annually with best-in-class margins.
The bull case for Reddit has 3 engines. First, AI data licensing. Reddit owns one of the most irreplaceable datasets on the internet, 18 years of authentic human conversation across millions of topics. OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta AI, all of them need this data to train better models. At $200 million annually and growing, this is a high-margin recurring revenue stream with pricing power.
Second, advertising ARPU expansion. Reddit's daily active users are highly engaged and skew toward valuable demographics: decision makers, early adopters, enthusiast communities. The average Redditor spends more time on the platform than on most social apps and is actively seeking product recommendations and information. That intent-driven engagement supports higher ad CPMs as Reddit's targeting improves.
Third, international monetization. A significant portion of Reddit's user base is outside the United States, but generates a disproportionately small share of ad revenue because international ad markets are less developed. As Reddit invests in international sales and ad technology, that revenue gap narrows. International is essentially a second growth vector embedded in the existing user base.
The bear case starts with macro sensitivity. Reddit is almost entirely an advertising business outside the data licensing deals. Digital advertising is cyclical. It collapsed in 2022 when brands pull back spending. With beta at 2.41, Reddit's stock would lead any downturn. If GDP growth slows materially in the back half of 2026, advertisers cut Reddit first.
Content moderation risk is real and underappreciated. Reddit's value proposition is authentic community discussion, but that same openness creates regulatory and reputational risk. Harmful content on subreddits, misinformation, extremism, privacy violations can trigger advertiser boycotts or regulatory action. A major content moderation failure could damage the brand significantly and force expensive remediation.
The data licensing business carries its own risk. AI companies are increasingly training on synthetic data and building proprietary datasets, reducing long-term dependence on third-party sources like Reddit. If the major AI labs decide Reddit's data is less essential in 2 to 3 years, that high-margin revenue stream could decline faster than analysts expect.
And competition from TikTok, YouTube, and Meta's Threads is ongoing. Reddit's community format is differentiated but not immune to time-of-day competition. If users shift screen time to short-form video and Reddit's daily active user growth decelerates, the ad revenue growth story decelerates with it. At 40 times earnings, deceleration gets punished severely.
Reddit's peer group in social media includes Meta, Snap, Pinterest, and Alphabet. Reddit stands out for having the highest gross margin, 91.5% versus Meta's 80% and Snap's roughly 53%. On pure platform economics, Reddit is running more efficiently than any of its social media peers.
Versus Meta, the gold standard for social media monetization, Reddit is still a small company. Meta generates roughly $42 billion per quarter versus Reddit's $663 million. But Meta's growth is in the mid to high teens, while Reddit is growing at 69%. If Reddit executes its ARPU expansion roadmap, it sustains growth rates well above the peer group.
Pinterest is the closest analog, a platform where users express intent through curated content, making advertising highly targeted. Pinterest trades at roughly 25 times forward earnings versus Reddit's 40 times, but Pinterest's growth rate is also substantially lower. Reddit commands a premium for its trajectory and the unique data licensing angle that Pinterest simply doesn't have.
Snap is the cautionary tale in this peer group. Snap has struggled to grow ARPU consistently and repeatedly disappointed on guidance. Reddit must demonstrate consistent ARPU growth over multiple quarters to prove Meta-like execution quality rather than Snap-like volatility. Q1 results are encouraging, but one quarter is not a trend.
Options activity around Reddit's earnings was significant given the high beta and the massive EPS beat. Implied volatility ahead of the report priced a 9 to 12% move in either direction, appropriate for a high beta company only 14 months public. The actual post-earnings move was substantially positive, rewarding those positioned for an upside surprise.
Near-term call positioning is elevated at the 150 and 160 strikes in the June and September series, suggesting traders expect the stock to close the gap toward the 168 analyst target. Put skew is relatively mild. The options market is not pricing heavy downside, which signals moderately bullish sentiment among derivatives traders.
Insider activity is worth watching for a recently public company. CEO Steve Huffman and executives received substantial equity grants at IPO, and lockup expiration in late 2024 opened the window for selling. Monitoring Form 4 filings for large discretionary sales distinct from pre-scheduled 10b5-1 plans will signal management conviction at current prices.
Institutional ownership has grown steadily since IPO as growth funds added positions when Reddit demonstrated real earnings conversion. 12 buy ratings with 0 sells is itself a sentiment signal. The institutional community is broadly constructive. The key variable is whether the next 2 to 3 quarters sustain this beat pattern or revert toward original consensus.
Bottom line on Reddit: 91% gross margins, 69% revenue growth, a data licensing moat no competitor can replicate. The stock is 14% below analyst consensus. The street is actually more bullish than current price.
The risk is beta at 2.41. This stock will hurt in any broad downturn. Size the position accordingly. For growth investors with a 2 to 3 year horizon and real volatility tolerance, Reddit is a cautious buy. Exceptional business, manage the size.
Financial data and charts sourced from Financial Modeling Prep. Charged alpha is for informational and educational purposes only. This is not investment advice. Always do your own research before making investment decisions. Thanks for listening to Charged Alpha. Subscribe and leave a review if this was useful. New episodes every earnings season. See you on the next one.
Ooh-wee-doo! That ticker tape starts dancing fast. A bull market thrill that's built to last. Dividends are ringing up the swing. Listen to that sweet ka-ching. It's a Wall Street swing. That fast-paced rhythm makes you sing. Yeah, the Wall